The record will show that counsel and Mr. Burns have returned to open court. The jury has also returned. We are ready to hear from the state's next witness.
State calls Christina Nash.
Good afternoon. We're headed right over here. Before you sit, please pause and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Go ahead and be seated. Ms. Nash, there are just a couple of expectations in the courtroom. Please allow the attorneys to finish their questions before you start your answer, even if you know where they're going to go.
Okay.
And I will ask them to give you the same courtesy to wait to see that you finish your answer before they ask the next question. Obviously, there's a microphone right in front of you.
Yes.
We have that there so that we can all hear you.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names for the record.
Christina Hayes Nash. Christina, Christina, Nash, Nash.
Thank you. You may proceed with your examination, Mr. Maybanks.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your current occupation?
I'm employed as a senior DNA analyst at Bodie Technology in Lorton, Virginia.
Can you tell us about Bodie Technology?
Yes, Bodie Technology is a private DNA lab that works on cases from all over the world, different agencies, different clients, as well as innocent project cases. We receive evidence there, test it, issue reports, and go testify if needed.
You mentioned Innocence Project then, and is that one of the organizations that sends you evidence to test or sends Bodie?
Yes. So Innocence Projects, every state we've received cases for different client agencies, police agencies, attorney agencies.
How long have you been employed by Bodie Technologies?
I've been employed at Bodie for about 5.5 years.
You told us that you work as a senior DNA analyst. Can you describe what duties are entailed in being a senior DNA analyst?
Yes, so as I described, that we received evidence from different agencies around the world. The supervisor will assign cases, of which, depending on the technologies, will be assigned to myself or other people on my team. I'll process biological material from items of evidence, make comparisons to references that had also been submitted, and issue reports on my conclusions. I also help train newer analysts and review other analysts' work.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Beginning the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit C, V as in Victory 4. Can you tell us what this is, Ms. Nash?
Yes, this is a copy of my CV.
Does this contain an up-to-date summary of your education, training, and experience, as well as your qualifications to testify as an expert witness in this case?
Yes.
Move to enter State's CV4, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Spees?
No objection.
CV4 will be made part of the record.
And that will be an item of evidence for the jury to review at a later date, but I do want to take some time and further introduce you to the folks in the courtroom here and have you describe some things about your background. First, what is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Forensic Science from Virginia Commonwealth University, as well as a Master's of Science in Forensic Science with concentration in Forensic Biology from the same university.
So have you had coursework in the area of genetics, biochemistry, molecular biology, statistics, and population biology as a part of that education?
Yes, along with many other classes.
Okay. If you could describe for us your continuing education that you received that's relevant to forensic testing or DNA testing.
So as a DNA analyst working in an accredited lab, we're required to meet a certain number of hours of continuing education so that we stay up to date in the field of forensic science and any new technologies. I've attended multiple continuing education. I have to have at least 12 hours. It ranges from 8 to 12 hours depending on your specialty within our lab. Continuing education is usually put on by guest lectures or additional literature reviews when we read scientific articles, or we attend specialized training within our lab and outside our lab.
Could you describe for us, just with respect to Bodie Laboratories or Bodie Technologies itself, the training process that you underwent at Bodie to become a forensic analyst?
Yes, so when I first arrived at Bodie, I was employed as a reference analyst. So this is an analyst who works on only known DNA samples, so buccal swabs, swabs of your cheek, blood samples, hair samples. Trainees will usually get signed off in references or sampling, and if they prove themselves, they will move up, obviously, within our organization to be allowed to work on casework, DNA forensic casework, and actually issue reports. My training involved watching a senior analyst perform all of the technologies that I'm signed off in, as well as participate in moot testing in the moot court. Essentially, we process fake evidence from fake crimes and make sure we're developing the correct profiles. We also have to take a written, verbal, and moot court examinations.
How many samples have you analyzed using DNA typing techniques that you learned through your experience and through Bodie Technologies?
Thousands of samples.
What sorts of samples have you used DNA typing techniques upon?
Oh, we test items of evidence ranging from cups, guns, bullets, swabs, blood stains, underwear, items containing suspected semen, hair, bones, teeth, which qualifies as bones, hair, clothing, any type of item of evidence that someone would come in contact with that may be submitted for a potential criminal case, we can test it usually.
Okay. What is proficiency testing?
So proficiency testing is a way to assess an analyst's ability to correctly develop DNA profiles. We are proficiency tested twice a year. Myself, I'm actually proficiency tested 4 times a year because I'm also qualified in paternity and kinship testing and statistics. We receive mock cases from an outside agency of which we do not know the correct answers or the conclusions of the case. We process the case as real evidence within our real casework workflow. We generate a report, issue that report to that agency, and they let us know if we've completed it satisfactorily or not.
How many proficiency tests have you personally participated in?
I participated in about 8 or 9 proficiency tests.
And did you perform those proficiency tests satisfactorily?
Yes, while the current session is still being graded, all previous submissions have been graded satisfactory.
I want to ask you some more questions about Bodie. How long has Bodie been established, and how long has it been performing forensic DNA typing?
Bodie has been around since 1995 and has been doing forensic testing since that time.
By whom is Bodie accredited?
Bodie is accredited by ANAB. This stands for the ANSI National Accreditation Board. They're an outside agency that comes and audits our lab to make sure we're following our own guidelines and to make any suggestions for changes that they may notice.
What type of quality assurance measures does your lab take to ensure that your results are reliable?
So we have many quality assurance measures. A couple can be that our facility is a secure facility. You can't just enter the facility and access evidence. Our evidence is secured in a further lockdown location. We wear protective equipment when we go into the lab, such as lab coats, goggles, hairnets, gloves. We bleach in ethanol, so we clean our area before working on each item of evidence. We only work with one item of evidence at a time. We initiate controls throughout our testing, such as negative, positive, and reagent blanks. We also have all of our work reviewed by another trained analyst and possibly a supervisor before issuing any type of reports.
You touched upon this a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to elaborate if you can. For what purposes does Bodie perform DNA analysis?
So the purpose of DNA testing is to link or exclude an individual from an item of evidence that may have been used in the commission of a crime. We, again, work with criminal agencies, police agencies, innocent project attorneys, and we also work with some private clients, as well as the government on special contracts.
What are the various forms of testing that Bodie performs in the arena of DNA forensics?
Bodie offers serology screening, which is looking at body fluids, identifying body fluids, as well as hair examinations, STR testing, so autosomal DNA testing, Y-Str testing, which is specific to males. We also offer mitotic DNA testing, and we also now offer genealogy testing and comparisons.
Are your analysis methods at Bodie accepted and used by other forensic DNA laboratories across the nation?
Yes.
I think you mentioned some of the various testing that Bodie performs. Does that include the short tandem repeater, the STR method that you wouldn't know, but we've heard about in this case? And also, I think you mentioned Y-Str?
Yes, so we offer STR testing and Y-Str testing at our lab. Only certain analysts are trained in both kits. I'm trained in both, not kits, both methods, but we do offer that type of testing.
Have you ever testified as an expert witness in forensic DNA analysis?
Yes,
Okay. Approximately how many times, if you can tell us?
about 37 or 38 times.
In what locations have you testified?
Idaho, Iowa now, California, a lot of stuff in California, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, Maryland, DC. There's an island off the coast of Asia. I've testified for that. I don't remember the name, sorry.
Wow. Okay, that's all right. It's a lot of places. Can you tell us, do you testify in terms of criminal investigations for both the prosecution and the defense?
Yes, our testimony is the same regardless of who calls us for testimony, but we are hired specifically sometimes by, of course, a prosecution-type client or a defense client in the case of innocent project.
If you were to provide us an idea, what would you say would be the ratio of cases in which you testify in terms of defense and state?
Probably 70-30, 70 being more for the prosecution, 30% for defense, but usually defense cases or innocent project type cases don't require that I come to court and testify. Usually the DNA report suffices as getting someone out of jail.
If another person, let's say another DNA lab professional or consultant would want to check your scientific work, in what way could they do that?
Well, we offer a discovery packet, which is a document that contains our full case file as well as our raw electronic data. They would have the ability to look at everything we've done for that case. Every movement with the evidence is documented. Every conclusion is documented. They would also have access to all emails and any client communications regarding the case. So if they did want to review the case, they could do so. Bodie also offers that service where we will receive discovery packets from other agencies to review their data to make sure their data is up to par with what the client is requesting.
Okay, Ms. Nash, so we've asked this of all of our DNA experts. I'm going to give you a shot at it too here. Should be easy one. What is DNA?
So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's the building block that makes you unique, allows the body to function. It's the code for everything. You get half of that from your mother, half of that from your father.
Okay. Is DNA the same between human beings?
About 99% of it is the same, but there's the 1% that makes you as an individual unique.
And is it that 1% area then that's normally the focus of the type of testing that you do?
Yes, so the locations that we're specifically looking at would be unique to you unless you have an identical twin.
And is the DNA in all parts of your body the same?
Yes, so if we obtain a DNA profile from your hair, it would be the same in your saliva, in your blood, in your fingernail, from your touch swabs. The only instance that I've come across where it's been different is if you've had a bone marrow transplant, because now you're generating blood from a different individual.
Your Honor, may I encourage the witness to get a little closer to the microphone, please?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So when you're doing your DNA forensic testing, how do you get a DNA profile?
Well, we usually generate a DNA profile following the DNA workflow. It starts with sampling from an item of evidence, extracting DNA from that item of evidence, quantitating, which is the estimation of how much DNA was on that item. We then amplify that sample at the locations, that 1% that we talked about. And then we visualize that on our instrumentation, at which point I would analyze that data and make comparisons to a reference sample that has undergone the same process.
How much biological material do you need to generate a DNA profile?
Well, for a complete profile, we like to have at least 20 cells, which translates to 6 to 20 picograms of DNA will give us a full profile.
And what are chromosomes then?
So chromosomes are just packages of DNA. You have 23 pairs. Again, half of that from your mother, half of that from your father.
All right, we can talk a little bit about a new term that we've heard, I think, in this courtroom now, and that's the Y-Str testing. So is that Y-STR? Is that how you guys spell it?
Yes.
Okay. And in order to explain that to us, and go through some of the foundations of that. So we've heard of the fact that there's X and Y chromosomes. Can you explain, first of all, how those are inherited?
Sure. So those are the sex chromosomes. XX will refer to a biological female, and XY is a biological male. Females can only pass on an X, and males can pass on either an X or a Y. So individual sperm will only carry an X or a Y. Again, that combines and you have a person, which results either in a male child if XY or XX if the sperm cell that's donated is carrying an X chromosome.
Can you apply the conventional method of STR testing, the short tandem repeat that we've heard about, to testing of the Y chromosome?
Yes, we use the exact same molecular biology techniques to develop that profile, a Y-STR profile. The only thing different is that we're looking at a different location. So we're specifically targeting the Y chromosome. So only Y male DNA will amplify in that test.
And is that what separates Y-STR testing from STR testing?
Yes, so STR testing is much more discriminatory. It's a unique testing. Y-STR testing is specific to males only in their paternal line.
So specific to males only in their paternal line.
Yes.
In what circumstances then, as a DNA analyst assigned to the cases that come in front of you, would you use Y-Str testing instead of conventional STR testing?
So we will use Y-Str testing, one, if it's requested, if that's the requested type of testing. Two, if it's a sexual assault type case in which we know there'll be clouded human DNA, so clouded female DNA with a small percentage of male. It helps us target the male DNA only, because if we did traditional STR testing, we would likely only obtain the female victim's profile.
Can the same reasoning be used for using Y-Str analysis? Can that be applied in cases where there's a mixture of DNA and the male donor is the major donor to the mixture?
Yes. So we can, if we have a Y-Str mixture, meaning there's at least more than one male present in that, if we have a major component that we can deduce from that profile, we can then use that for comparisons as well.
Are Y-Str testing procedures generally accepted as valid procedures by the scientific community?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the FBI and the Armed Forces DNA Lab have been using it for more than 10 years.
Do the techniques and procedures used in Y-Str testing produce accurate and reliable results?
Yes.
So if two samples share the same Y-Str profile, what is the significance of that match?
Well, the statistic that we use for calculating such a match is called the counting method, at which point we would search our accredited mandated SOP database, where we're looking at a small fraction of males in the United States, and we see if we can find that profile in that database. If we can't, or if we can, we develop a statistic based off that match with a 95% confidence interval.
Is this a generally accepted way to present the relative rarity of a profile in the population?
Yes, for Y-Strs, this is the method we use.
And has Y-Str analysis been admitted in other court proceedings in the United States?
Yes.
And for the record, does Y-Str analysis differ from STR analysis in that you can't really compare the results with each other?
Correct. So if I've developed an STR profile and a Y-Str profile, those two cannot be compared because we're testing totally different locations.
So, for example, if in this case there was a previous STR profile developed by one of the analysts, that shouldn't be used to compare it to a Y-Str profile developed.
Correct.
Is that kind of like apples to oranges?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so did your laboratory, Bodie Laboratory, receive evidence from the Cedar Rapids Police Department and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations Laboratory regarding the investigation of a cold case homicide involving an extract from blood scrapings taken from a gear in a known buccal swab of an individual by the name of Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Start by just going over a couple of business forms here from Bodie. Ms. Nash, here you go. I'll take the
Okay.
CD from you there, and I'll trade you for that.
All right.
So 17P, can you tell us what that is?
This is a copy of the inventory for this particular case. So it's the documentation of when we receive items of evidence and what we do with them when we take it into the lab initially. So our first time opening the envelope, what we see, and what it's labeled as, and any item numbers. Item numbers.
And is this a record kept in the regular course of business activity to document the chain of custody of items, among other things that you receive in the laboratory?
Yes, so we do have separate chain of custody documents. This inventory does document who had the evidence at the time and what they did during their initial examination of those items.
Okay. Move to enter into evidence 17P, Your Honor.
Mr. Spies, have you had an opportunity to review 17P?
I have, Your Honor, and we have no objection.
17P will be received and made part of the record. P as in Paul, is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
P as in Paul.
Paul.
Thank you.
And can we publish that, Your Honor?
You may.
Just so we know, while this comes up here, and when we're referring to items later in the report that you developed as a result of this, do you assign a Bodie item number to the items that come into your laboratory?
Yes, so when evidence is initially arrived at our agency, we assign it a unique case number. Once the evidence is taken into the lab and we're deciding what needs to be processed, each item that's being processed is given a unique item number.
You witness Nash, can you hold me, hand me that? There. And so, is this the case number here then that this was assigned by Bodie?
Yes, CCA 1961-0082.
And does this here indicate then the items that were received for your analysis?
Yes,
So the same number appears here on the first item with a hyphen or dash. E, is that 01?
yes, EO1 refers to evidence item 1.
And when that arrived, did it have a designation, looks like an I in front of it?
I.1.3, gear shift extract.
Described as a gear shift extract.
Mhm.
And then the next item underneath that, same case number, hyphen R02.
R02, that refers to a reference, so evidence items get E numbers, references get R numbers, and it's just in sequential order as we have those items of evidence.
And so does this indicate then that you received an item described as the Buccal Swab from Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes.
We could scroll down on that just momentarily here, and this is what you're talking about as far as the description of the items as they came in and documenting the time and such on the right of when the descriptions were noted and the items came in.
Yes.
May I approach witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
I'll trade you again. I'll give you 17Q.
17Q. Okay.
Quiet. And ask you if you recognize that document.
Yes, this is the initial chain of custody that we generated once we received the item of evidence and assigned it a unique case number. We document where that evidence came from, the tracking numbers, what common carriers such as FedEx or UPS or USPS delivered those items, and we have documentation of who checks it in and out of our evidence section.
And is this a record that's kept in the regular course of business activity with Bodie Technology?
Yes.
Move to enter state 17Q, Your Honor.
Without objection.
17Q will be received and made part of the record.
Scroll down for that. And if we could publish that, Your Honor?
You may.
Yeah. And 17Q document the arrival of the item that we previously noted and described as the gear shift?
Yes, along with other DNA extracts.
Okay. And after its arrival then at Bodie Labs, it was the items then secured for further analysis?
Yes.
All right. May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
trade you one more time here. Well, not one more time, second to last time. This is 17S here, and do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the chain of custody generated for the second submission of evidence in this case.
And as previously noted, is that the chain of custody form documenting the arrival of the known buccal swabs of Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes,
Okay. Is this also a document kept in the regular course of business activity?
yes.
Okay. Move to enter state 17S.
Again, without objection.
Okay. 17S will also be received and made part of the record.
And yeah, if we could just put that up really quick.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And maybe you can tell us then, Ms. Nash, when that second item, the buccal swabs, arrived. Scroll up there.
So these items, this item of evidence was received June 4th, 2019.
Okay. And does this document then the chain of custody, the evidence until the time that it was sent back?
Yes,
Okay. And I think on the bottom we have one last date there. November of 19, November 12th.
yes. So this is when we're finished with testing. We notify the client, or the client notifies us that they would like the evidence back. At that point, we package the evidence and draw down any extracts and return them to the submitting agency.
Okay. May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
And the witness would have marked as State's Exhibit number 12. I have a few questions about that. First of all, what is this document? How would you describe it?
This is the final report I authored dated July 10th, 2019, detailing my results and conclusions for the testing in this case.
And was this the report that you completed based upon the request of the Cedar Rapids Police Department and the Iowa DCI lab to examine an extract from a gear shift selector in order to develop a profile from it and compare it to a profile developed from the known buccal swab of Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes,
And was this document made at or near the time you conducted your analysis of those items?
yes,
And is this also a record kept in the regular course of business activity?
yes,
Does this appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that report?
yes. This is the complete report.
And do you believe this report would be helpful in explaining and helping explain the testimony regarding the results of your analysis?
Yes.
Before we get to that, can you explain the process you used to test these items? I think you gave us a kind of a general description, but maybe just refresh us on that.
Sure. So the general workflow is, again, from sampling. We receive the item of evidence. We take it into the lab. We take a small portion of it. We sample that item, add chemicals to it during our extraction process to help release DNA that may be present on the item. We then quantify. Again, that's the estimation of DNA on that item. This allows us to appropriately target in our tests. We then amplify. So this means to make copies of the DNA locations that we're interested in. For this specific case, we're interested in locations on the Y chromosome. Then we separate and visualize. This generates an EPG, or electropherogram, that I look at and verify that all the peaks are actual alleles and remove any artifacts. For this particular case, because the gear shift agency description, that item that actually arrived was an extract, a DNA extract. So we skip the sampling and the extraction and the quantitation part of our tests, and we go straight to amplification. There's no need to redo those things if a previous lab has done them. We take it from that point forward, along with the reagent blanks, which are controls used during that initial testing.
As a result of that process, you then generate the results that you came up with in your report.
Correct.
Move to enter State's Exhibit number 12.
Without objection.
12 will be received and made part of the record.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, so we'll just go down the report here so you can explain your findings from us. First, looks like you indicated, at least replicated from the inventory form, the items that you received. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you put designations, again, to the gear shift extract of the Bodie case number with a hyphen E01 at the end of it?
Yes.
And was there anything done with either of the other two samples there, the Regent blank?
Those are reagent blanks, so those were received with the item of evidence. They would have been documented in the case notes section of the inventory, so the little paragraph that we skipped over a bit. These are processed along with the extract. So from start to finish, accredited labs use a control throughout their processing to make sure the reagents they're using aren't contaminated or have any issues. That's what we call a reagent blank. We initiate our own controls, our own positive and negative controls. Since this case was a DNA extract, it came with its own reagent blanks. So we have to continue that processing to make sure any results we obtain are accurate and of quality. So both reagent blanks that came with that case were also processed. And that's what the RB stands for, reagent blank.
Okay, great. And then down farther there, you indicate, as you said, from the chain of custody forms on June 4th of 2019, you received the Buccal Swab from Jerry Lynn Burns.
Yes.
Okay. And getting to the results, conclusions, and statistics here, the process that you documented, was that the same process you just described for us here?
Yes.
And under number 1, you indicated a Y-STR profile was obtained from the sample described as Jerry Lynn Burns, or the Buccal Swabs of Jerry Lynn Burns.
Yes, so that profile was used for comparisons to the evidence profile that we developed.
So you developed your own profile from the Buccal Swabs. You didn't use any previous laboratories profile?
Correct.
Okay.
So that would have arrived as a swab, so we would have went through that whole DNA workflow from sampling to separation and visualization. Again, the DNA extract went from just a portion of that workflow.
And further on down here, you indicated a partial Y-STR profile was obtained from the sample that's described above as the gear shift extract. Can you tell us about that finding?
Yes. So a partial profile just means it wasn't a full profile. For this test on the Y chromosome, we're looking at 23 locations. A full profile was developed from the reference sample. From the evidence extract, only a partial profile, so not all 23. I believe it was 13 locations out of the 23 were developed. But because it was a single source profile, meaning coming from one individual, not multiple males, we're able to make comparisons even though it's partial.
And so I was going to ask you about that. Then when you evaluated this sample and did the testing on it, you only found one single source?
Correct.
So you were confident you were dealing with just one strand of DNA from one individual?
From one contributor, yes.
And then your finding indicates the individual associated with Jerry Lynn Burns, so that's from the known buccal of Burns, is that right?
Yes.
Cannot be excluded as a possible contributor of the partial Y-STR profile. Can you explain that finding?
Cannot be excluded means this person is included as a match to this profile.
What would you need to be able to exclude somebody?
We would need a mismatch in our allele table. So if you want to scroll to page 3
Yes,
of the
please.
report.
Yeah.
So this is an allele table. It's a summation of all the DNA testing I've completed and the analysis. It results in the 23 locations that we tested, which are listed here, the DYS locations. These are different locations on the Y chromosome. This first column is sample E01, and the second column is the reference for Jerry Lynn Burns. We then make our comparisons. Again, this is a summation. I actually look at the raw data and the electropherograms, but this is a quick comparison so that it's easier for juries and attorneys to understand.
Thank you.
So as you can see, we can go locus by locus. DYS 576 is that very first one. And let's see that. So these are different locations. These are the 23 locations we tested. In the evidence sample, we obtained a 17. In Barnes profile, we had also obtained a 17. And at all the locations that we looked at where we developed DNA, they match to what we have from Barnes reference sample.
I think you mean Burns, right?
Burns,
Okay.
yes,
That's okay.
Burns.
Right.
In order to exclude someone, which is usually our first go, it's our first goal to see if there is any mismatches, there would have to be at least 2 numbers missing, or mismatched from this person's profile.
So all you'd need is one allele not to match?
Correct. Well, two locations,
2 locations.
yeah. Only because we allow for mutations.
Okay, all right. But you didn't find any evidence of there being any lack of a match at any of the?
Correct. All those alleles correspond to the alleles we see in Burns's profile.
I think we'll go to page 2 then. Is that where the calculations are? Okay,
Yes.
great. So that's my next question then here. You've got the information, you developed the profile from the gear shift extract, or what was described as such, and then the profile from the buccal swab of Mr. Burns here. What do you do with this information in order to generate a random match probability calculation?
So this is referred to as the counting method. Random match probability is what is usually reported for STR statistics.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No
Okay.
problem. Those numbers are usually much higher and what people are used to hearing on TV, 1 in quintillion, 1 in sextillion. With YSTRs, we won't see statistics like that because of the paternal inheritance of the Y chromosome. We know it exists in more than one individual because you had to obtain it from someone else. So father to son to grandson, so on, any paternal cousins, uncles, all male relatives would have the same YSTR profile, barring any type of mutation. So the counting method is used here. So it gives a statistic that doesn't look as nice as a STR statistic, but it is significant for YSTRs.
And when you say there would be more than one individual that would have this profile, and you talked about the line, and would that be in the same ancestral line?
Yes, that would be in the same paternal line. So grandson, grandfather, father, son, grandson, all those male individuals, if they're all of the same paternal line, would have that same YSTR profile.
So do you then take that profile that you developed and use the information that's on this report to come up with some calculations?
Yes, so we have a database that we search. It's referred to the US YSTR database. It's a subset of male individuals in the database to represent the United States as a whole. And obviously, it doesn't contain everyone in that database, but that's why we apply a confidence interval to our statistic. So looking at the statistic, we have different database groups that we search through. So African American, Asian, Caucasian, Hispanic, and Native American. And then we give a total for the combined populations within this US YSTR database. So in the African American database, we did not see this partial profile at all in the about 1,300 individuals. In the Asian database, we didn't see the profile at all in 650 individuals. In the Caucasian database, we didn't see this profile at all in about 1,400 individuals. Hispanic database, again, we didn't see the profile at all in 961 individuals. And in the Native American database, we didn't see this profile at all in 882 individuals. So that gives us a total for combined populations of 0 and 5,305 that we didn't see this profile. We then apply a confidence interval to this statistic, which basically translates into me saying that we are 95% confident that we would expect only one individual and about 1,700 male individuals to have this Y-Str profile.
So is that your overall finding then, with consideration to all the databases mentioned here, that you'd only expect to see one profile in 1,773 that would be similar to what you developed?
Yes, that would be an exact match to the partial profile. So if I had a room of 1,700 male individuals, I would expect to see this Y-Str profile once.
What does that decimal point number refer to that's underneath it?
So that's our profile frequency. It's just the mathematical conversion of the 1 in 1,700. So this is 0.0564% of U.S. males would have this Y-Str profile, this partial Y-Str profile.
So you're including less than, well, not quite 0%, but 0.0564% could potentially be included as having this partial profile.
Correct, 0.00564%.
And then in regards to the number of individuals or the percentage of individuals that would be excluded from having this partial profile, can you give us that figure?
Yes, so that would just be 100 minus the 0.0564, and that's about 99.94% of male individuals, U.S. male individuals would be excluded from this partial profile.
You know, for a Y-Str profile, based upon your experience in identifying, in developing and comparing Y-Str profiles, is this a significant number?
Yes, this number is expected with the partial profile that we have using Y-Strs.
So with the partial profile that you developed, this is a number that you would expect to see?
Yes. There are instances when we have a database search that results in us seeing a profile. So this would change the frequency. So the number of observations, instead of 0, we would have seen it once or twice, or 3 times here, 5 times there, and it would change our total frequency. For this particular profile, we did not see this profile at all in the database.
And these numbers, are they intended then based upon your practices at the laboratory, your accreditation and such, to then be extrapolated to the population as a whole?
Yes, so we have to, since we can't test everyone, we have to use a database of a certain size to make sure that we can extrapolate. That's why our statistic has a 95% confidence interval on it. So we're 95% confident that we would expect to see this partial profile out of one time in about 1,700 males.
That's all I have for now, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Spees.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Nash, you've told us that the partial profile that you obtained from the analysis of the specimen obtained from the Buccal Swab from Jerry Lynn Burns, you determined that that partial profile was, I'm sorry, the partial profile that you developed was from examination of the gear shift extract, right?
Correct.
And-
Gear shift extract was the item we received. We did not receive any gear shift swabs.
You did not obtain the gear shift swab.
Correct.
So the extract that you examined was, did you re-examine that extract?
During our testing, yes.
Okay. And the partial profile that you obtained from that extract, you described as coming from a sole male contributor. Is that accurate?
Well, it's described as the Y-Str profile being from one individual. It's possible that it's a mixture in an autosomal test, like a traditional STR test, But since we're using Y-STRs, it would only target the male. So I would only ever see males in this profile, regardless if it was a mixture of male and female previously.
And I think you just answered my next question. In
Okay.
determining that profile, you didn't look at the female contributor to that mixture.
Correct. This test is specific to males.
And because you didn't look at the female contributor, you couldn't tell whether the male contribution to that mixture was a major or a minor contribution?
Correct.
Likewise, as we've heard other testimony in this trial, you're not able to tell from the testing that you did whether the biologic source of that male chromosome came from blood, from sweat, from mucus, from semen, or any other biologic material.
No, not with the testing we completed. We would not be able to identify body fluids at this point.
And while we're on the subject of statistics, which fascinates me, we've heard a lot in polling data about margins of error. Is the confidence level or the confidence factor that you've talked about, is that similar to a margin of error?
Not exactly. It's a conservativeness in our statistic. So it allows for 2.5% on each end of the bell curve. If you're into statistics, you know what I'm talking about. On the side of the bell curve.
Yeah.
Okay. We refer to it again as a confidence interval. So it encompasses the majority of my bell curve. So I'm confident, I'm 95% confident in this statistic.
Just you're talking about it makes my heart race.
Okay.
I got a D in statistics. So, so once again, the database on which you drew the statistic 1 in 1,773, is that a private database on which you drew?
No, that's a publicly available database that is used by forensic DNA labs that are doing Y-Str testing. We have, that database has been merged with a larger database referred to as YHRD, that's YHRD database. But it still looks at just the U.S. Y-Str population. So the statistic would be fairly similar.
I don't know if your, the exhibits that you've been shown this afternoon reveal it or not. Are you able to tell the amount of DNA that you were able to extract or that was extracted from the gear shift extract?
No, because that item arrived already extracted and quantified.
Okay. Thank you. All the
Yes.
questions I have for you.
Okay.
Redirect, Mr. Maybanks.
Ms. Nash, since you're targeting males by doing this process, then after the testing was done, were you confident that you only found the existence of one male contributor?
Correct. There's single source, no evidence of additional male contributors in this particular sample.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Anything further from Ms. Nash?
No, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. You may step down. State may call its next witness. Yes. Preparation for the next witness, we need to rearrange furniture a bit, so we will be in recess for about 15 minutes.